Now, what I mean by using social categories, because he's often, he says this whenever he goes to every meeting. He says that caste is a source of problem, right? In our lives, caste became a source of major problem. Or to put it in another way, caste became a source of disadvantage for the marginalized communities, whereas caste became a source of advantage for the Savarnas or the upper caste, or especially the Brahmins. So caste became a problem to the marginalized communities or a source of disadvantage, whereas caste became a source of advantage to the upper caste or the Savarnas. Now this he understood, and then he said that from now on, let me use caste as a source of opportunity. Caste as a source of opportunity. So, see, he knows, he knows the limitation of power. He knows that, if, that desire, if there is more power, that hunger for power, it corrupts. He knows that. That is the reason he even, used to talk about corruption. He used to say that how corruption is a danger to Indian society, because if there is more corruption, obviously who will lose a lot? Marginalized communities, right? So he knows the limitations of power. He knows the limitations of using caste as a source of opportunity, right? Now that's where he balanced it very well. And if you read Chamcha Age, you will understand that how he balanced that. He mentioned three things in the way out. I know that you all have read Chamcha Age. The three way outs, the balance thing, how did he balance? He said that social action is a, right, short-term action. He said that political power, that is a long-term action, and then cultural change as a durable action. It's a durable way out. So short-term, long-term, and a durable change. So he did not only focus on the power. He merely did not focus on the power. He knows that if I use caste as a source of opportunity, there would lie, some issues. But in his experience, starting, with DS4, BAMSF, and then Bahujan Samaj Party, he got, lot of experience in trying to understand or in trying to put that into practice. Now that is my first submission, that Kanshiram becomes very relevant for us, or Kanshiram becomes very phenomenal for us if we have to understand the notion of power. Because Ambedkar also had a different conception of political power. Right? Now what we generally do is, we use that one statement and we say that political power is the master key, etc. Yes, it's a master key. But how do we devise, how do we use that master key is something that Kanshiram knows. Right? How do you use that master key? Now this master key cannot go into everybody's hands, no? So he knows in whose hands, the key has to be kept. That's the same logic, in our home also that we do. Right? Right? We keep all the money in the birwa or almara, but we won't, give that key to everyone. Right? Right? So we know how should we, balance it. Yes, there is a problem again. Feminists would say that obviously that key is, in the hands of men, right? So he knows that. So he reversed it and he put that entire key in a woman called Behenji Mayawati, right? That's it. There is nothing, difficult for us to understand what Kanshiram is and who Kanshiram is. If we understand the logic of power, if we understand the grammar of politics, we will understand Manyawar Kanshiram. So that is my first thing. Second, he always, he was very clear about, after his experience as in working with Republican Party of India, all the earlier speakers, and again, all this, speakers as Parshu was mentioning that, working in organization, etc., it would give you a confidence. You have seen all the people who talked earlier, they are all members of BSF and they are actively working from, a few years here in the campus. So, how not to run a movement, how not to run movement or how not to do politics is something that was essential for Kanshiram. As few earlier speakers, they have mentioned that his experience in Maharashtra, his experience working with Republican Party of India, that made Kanshiram to understand that how not to run movement or how not to do politics. Now in this he got this experience of understanding or making a distinction between bargaining and begging. Bargaining and begging. What he says, that most of the the movements or the organizations that are associated with the the lower caste or the marginalized communities, they are merely begging, but they are not bargaining. So what he says is, the whole the whole idea of power that I am having or the Bahujan Samaj Party would have, that would be a notion of bargaining, but not a notion of begging. Now that is one clear, he was very categorical in mentioning that. Now why did he say that the notion of bargaining? Because he knows what politics is. He knows what politics is as a structure, right? That is the thing, that we learn in political science, right? What is politics? We say that it is a bargaining. We say that politics is all about conflict resolution, right? We say that, politics is all about who gets what, when and how, right? Harold Laswell's, book. So, Kanshiram knows what is politics. That is the reason he made a distinction between the notion of bargaining and notion of begging. Number one point. Does it mean that he did not read Ambedkar closely? No, we are wrong if we think that. He read or he saw the entire life of Dr. Ambedkar closely, because Dr. Ambedkar was also bargaining but not begging with the British or with the Indian National Congress. Now in all this, what happens is, the confrontation becomes a method, right? Confrontation becomes a method when you are trying to do your own politics, and that's what Kanshiram was also doing. Kanshiram used the confrontational method, right? I think today most of you have shared one video in your status where Kanshiram would be talking in the parliament. Speaker would be saying ki bas karo, samapt ho gaya aapka, time waqt ho gaya, aap samapt kijiye. Then Kanshiram sits and he says that I will talk outside the parliament. He did not say that give me 1 minute, give me extra time. He was very unapologetic about his confrontational method, right? So he was very clear, he was very categorical in using confrontation as a method, right? Probably today we might say that no, why we have to use confrontation? Look at his slogans again. It will give you a notion of confrontation that he was having. वोट हमारा राज तुम्हारा नहीं चलेगा नहीं चलेगा, जो जमीन सरकारी है वो जमीन हमारी है. The land that belongs to the government, whatever the land, I mean whatever it belongs to the government, that belongs to us. Now today what happening? जो जमीन सरकारी है वो जमीन ऑक्शन के लिए है. वो जमीन ऑक्शन के लिए है, right? ఏదైతే ప్రభుత్వ భూములు ఉన్నాయో అవి వేలం పాట వేయడానికి ఉన్నాయి. Whereas Kanshiram said differently. Now, you can understand Kanshiram to your ongoing protest that is happening in Hyderabad Central University, right? The auction. Now, land became a commodity, right? Land became a commodity, but for Kanshiram, land is a very powerful resource, where it can completely change the lives of the marginalized people. So here, land becomes a state entity. Again, go back to Ambedkar, writing in states and minorities, or Ambedkar's notion of state socialism. Land is not a commodity for Ambedkar. Land was not a commodity for Ayyankali, right? Land was not a commodity for Phule, whereas land is a centrally essential tool in the lives of the marginalized section. Now again, the land struggles also you can recall. What happened in Tamil Nadu and also in Kerala. Yeah, I know this because I was the one, who got this speaker in 2014. So I know how to operate this, right? And I'm still using. Gudipelli Ravyana is there, I think. Okay. So land, becomes a commodity. Land became a commodity nowadays. So that's what the confrontational method, as in जो जमीन सरकारी है वो जमीन हमारी है, बट लेकिन अभी क्या हो रहा है, जो जमीन सरकारी है वो जमीन ऑक्शन के लिए है, बेच दो जितना चाहिए कॉर्पोरेट एंटिटीज को बेच दो. So this is a problem, if we are not able to understand Kanshiram's politics. So that was my second submission, that when he learned that how not to run a movement, right, he tried to make this distinction between bargaining and begging. So in his entire lifetime you have seen, and even the current Bahujan Samaj party also, under the leadership of Benji Mayawati, is still following the same principle. Today, people accuse a lot. People write, a lot of negative things about, Benji Mayawati, what she does, etc., compromise and all. But, one thing that, all these people who are writing in media, they don't try to understand, this distinction between the bargaining and begging. So Benji Mayawati never did begging even till this date. I think, she's still following the principle that, Manyawar Kanshiram has echoed in his everyday practice. I think, this is one thing that all of us who are here, we have to, tell in the classrooms, we have to tell in the meetings, we have to tell in the villages, right? So this is one second point that I want to mention. Now, third, Kanshiram becomes important, if we have to understand the whole importance of leadership, right? Nayakatvam. So we all know that, we talk about leadership a lot, right? But we don't talk about how to become a leader, right? So how to become a leader is something that, this understanding that we are lacking, in our everyday life. See, one thing that Kanshiram had mentioned, in an interview, that he says that I will go to Maharashtra also. Look at his, confidence. He said that I'll go to Maharashtra again and I will put an end to the violence that is being unleashed by Shiva Sena. And the interviewer asked, how do you do that? You know what he says? The people who are with Shiva Sena, the people who are, engaging in this violence, are majorly comes from 4 castes. And this 4 castes belong to the scheduled caste, right? Where, he talks about Aghari caste, Bhandari, Kholi and Chamar. He says that this 4 castes predominantly, they are engaging with Shiva Sena. And the minute I step into Maharashtra, the minute I show them what I am, they will sideline, or they will, disassociate themselves with Shiva Sena and they will join me, and then, that is how I will put an end to Shiva Sena, is something he says. Now, see the amount of confidence, in 1980s, right? Because that was the time when, the communal violence also was, that was there. It was a very communal sensitive area, right? Maharashtra, Bombay especially. It was a very communal sensitive area. And, Shiva Sena was very active in mobilizing the people who are residing in slums, for your information. There are books, there are scholars, who have written on that. You have Atreya Sen, all these scholars who wrote about Shiva Sena women. I mean, how Shiva Sena has mobilized the women and how Shiva Sena has mobilized people in slums also for communal violence. Can you believe that? For communal violence. Now, Kanshiram knows this, that if people have no resources to engage in the larger public institutions, obviously the other parties like, BJP or Shiva Sena, they will take them, right? And they will use them for their own means. And one such, contemporary, live example that you have is, look at that tree. Look at that tree. What, you can better understand how, the people from these communities, they are used. Now, this becomes very important, as in the point that I have mentioned is how to become a leader. So he says a very important point that if you want to become a leader, you need to become an expert in the present life. You need to become an expert in understanding or dealing with the present life, but not about the past. Now generally, who talks about the past? In the Karma Siddhanta, using the Karma Siddhanta, who talks about the past? The Brahmins. The priest talks about the past. So he says that people are spending crores and crores of money in going to Kumbh Mela. This he said in 1980s. And you have seen the Maha Kumbh Mela that is happening now, right? Which has recently happened. But in that, in 20 years, 25 years back, Kanshiram said this, that people go to Kumbh Mela. They say that, let us clear our sins, etc. and all. So he says that, if you have to understand the present life, you come to me. Or if you want to understand your past life, go to a Brahmin, or, go to the banks of Ganga. Right? So he says this, very important point that you have to become an expertise in understanding the present life. So this is the second point, that Kanshiram has offered us, in understanding, the role of leadership, right? So it is not just that, that a leadership is important. We also have to understand that how to become a leader, right? That's the second point. So the last, two things I'll conclude in 5 to 6 minutes. As I have mentioned that, understanding, his book Chemcha Age, right? Yes, he tried to describe, different categories into, different types of chemchas, etc. Right? And then he also give us a way out. As I said, the short term, long term, and the durable change that he mentions. Now, what I sort of, in over a period of, my own experience in direct, politics or, activism, student activism, and after that, coming out of university here, in HCU or JNU, what I understood is that, we fail to carry forward a narrative. Right? We know that, politics sort of lies, politics needs some narrative, right? Right? For example, look at the last general election. The whole narrative was save constitution, right? The opposition parties have used, the notion of save constitution, the narrative. And generally, what political analysts would also say that, Congress or the opposition party is not having a narrative. That is the reason you are not able to fight BJP or Narendra Modi. This is something, regularly we hear. But what becomes is important is, how do we understand narrative? Through slogans or, through confrontational politics that, is being practiced by Manyawar, Kanshiram. Can Manyawar, Kanshiram offer us, in fixing or in delivering some sort of narratives? That is most important. Because without narrative, in this time, probably we cannot do a confrontational politics. Yes, if you have the larger, the economic capital or social capital, you can directly go to the ruling party and you can beg. Then you will get, some or other sort of share. But if you want a complete share, as what, Parshu has mentioned, if you want, the entire pala, mottam pale neeke ravali anante, right? If you want that entire share, how would you do that? Right? So, confrontational method is very important, and for that confrontational method, having a narrative and having a slogan is also most important. Now here, I would, want all of us to understand that what can a narrative and what can a slogan do in politics? What can a narrative and what can a slogan do in everyday politics? Right? Because, yes, everybody would understand what politics is. A common person would understand that, look, if, politics is not taken seriously, or if I'm not interested in politics, the politicians will loot me, they will do lot of corruption, etc. This minimum understanding every voter has, every, citizen would have. But in a larger structural way, right, how do we understand that, the importance of a narrative or a slogan? So what I would see is that, we generally lack, vernacularizing the larger, agenda. As in, going to the people and, telling them in their own language. Right? So, for example, I can use, example like, we have Gudipalli Ravanna with us. Now, in understanding the political power, social transformation, I might, give a larger theory. But, a revolutionary singer, a person, who is using song in order to enforce a narrative, what Gudipalli Ravanna would say? బలములేదని ధనములేదని నిరాశాసలే వద్దురా నిరాశాసలే వద్దురా మన ఓట్లు మనకు గుద్దుతే చాలు అధికారం మనకే దక్కురా. Right? So a larger volume of social transformation or political power, Gudipalli Ravanna has simplified within 2 or 3 lines. The same way all these singers, right? So అందుకే I was just thinking, బలము లేదని ధనము లేదని నిరాశాసలే వద్దురా, సీట్లు నిండలేదని నిరాశాసలే వద్దురా, మన మీటింగ్లు మనము పెట్టుకుంటే చాలు పరివర్తన మనకే దక్కురా. పరివర్తన ఏ రోజైనా అది ఖాయం, దానికి బట్ ఇట్ విల్ టేక్ టైం, రైట్? కొన్ని వేల సంవత్సరాల ఏమంటారు, వేల సంవత్సరాల అసమానతలని, ఈ రుగ్మతలు ఇంత ఏమంటారు ఒక కంప్లీట్గా డీప్ రూటెడ్గా ఉన్న ఈ అసమానతల్ని ఒక 10 సంవత్సరాలు 5 సంవత్సరాలలో మనం దాటిని తీయలేము. సో అందుకే సో వాట్ ఐఎమ్ ట్రయింగ్ టు సే ఇస్ దట్ ద ఇంపార్టెన్స్ ఆఫ్ narrative or slogan that becomes important, right, for our communities to make them understand, right, in their own language, in people's language, about the larger structure of politics. The larger structure of social they already have. సమాజం ఎట్లుంటుంది అది వాళ్ళకి తెలుసు, రైట్? కానీ రాజకీయ వ్యవస్థ ఎలా ఉంటుంది అనేది బహుశా మన ప్రజలకు తెలియకపోవచ్చు. అందుకే స్లోగన్స్, narratives అనేటివి that becomes important, and Kanshiram did that. So that is my third point. Now the last thing that I want to mention is that how do we invoke Kanshiram in these times? Most of you who are very new to this campus, right, you might probably think that we have seen Ambedkar, we have seen Phule, or we have seen Vivekananda, Mahatma Gandhi. From where this person called Manyawar Kanshiram came? Do we even need him? Do we even have to study, right? Or do we even have to know about him? Yes, right? Obviously we have to know about Kanshiram. For example, in this university, even now, if you closely study how in the last 5 to 8 years the entire campus demography is completely being changed. Look at the caste, look at the class background of the people who are coming into institutions, or look at where they have studied their graduation. You will see a significant change. How the university was in 2010, 2005, and how the university is in 2025, you will for sure see a significant change, right? Now given this, what people will think that, do we need Kanshiram, or do we need to think about those identity or narratives or slogans, right? If you want to pass our degree, or if you want to get a degree from this institution, yes, because Kanshiram is one such person, especially for those people who are in social sciences or humanities. I am mentioning an academic point that Kanshiram helps you in understanding the limitations of power. Kanshiram helps you in understanding how can you expand the notion of power. How can you expand the notion of power? Both ways, expanding the notion of power and understanding the limitations of the power. This is an academic contribution, right? The help that you can get by reading Kanshiram, which I got, and I greatly benefited from Kanshiram in the last 10 to 15 years. That is the academic point. Now, for the students who are in the science background, can Kanshiram offer you something? Yes, because Kanshiram was also a student of science, and in fact, Kanshiram was a scientist. Right? A scientist who understood the social science, right? And a scientist who have completely mastered, the social engineering project. Right? Who could, better do? A science student. So if you are a science student, you can diagnose, you can, do that diagnosis of the society. You can, you can basically have a treatment procedure if you want to repair the society. I think, that is what Kanshiram can do. That's the reason Kanshiram did not focus on social theory, political theory or cultural theory. He was very categorical. He was very unapologetic, right? In mentioning about his stand in the Chemcha Age book, what did he call? Social action, political action and cultural action. And, that is what we say that, by, talking about Karl Marx, what do we say? Philosophers have only interpreted the world, but the point is to change it, right? So Kanshiram, in a very radical way, he is, trying to invoke, the action, the notion of action. Whatever you have learnt, right? Whether if, for example, if you have got benefited from the reservation, give back to the society, right? So I think, he expanded the notion of social, he expanded the notion of political. I think, these are, few, in few organic way, right? That I can understand Kanshiram from my own life, what Kanshiram has done to me. Again, a whole credit goes to Bahujan Students Front for introducing Kanshiram to me. And now, I became, a political science, social science teacher where I am, teaching hundreds of, students in this country. So I think, with this few words, I once again extend my revolutionary greetings to each one of you. And I extend my, revolutionary greetings to the Students' Union members for resisting, the whole agenda, right, of the government's stand, as in where they are trying to see the land as a commodity, right? So more power to all of you, and I extend my solidarity also in resisting that, because when I was in the union before that, there were two incidents where we have collectively resisted that, in the opening of TIFR thing, where Prime Minister Manmohan Singh came. So I remember that we were 100 people here and there were 1,000 police, gathered just here in the South Campus Junction. They stopped us. And the same thing, about the mushroom rock and the, the drainage system that was there, it was not good. So that was entirely, pushed to the university, sort of land. So then faculty members, all of us, we went and, we resisted that. So, this is a continuous, engagement, if you are in the campus. So, I think, we have to collectively resist this, and I am, sort of repeating the point that, Kanshiram, has understood land, right, as, as a very powerful tool in the lives of the marginalized people. He did not see the land as a mere commodity. So thank you one and all. Jai Savitri, Jai Bhim, Jai Kanshiram.